Hey guys, Motorcarnut here, and today we're talking about milkshakes. The kind of milkshake that you really just don't want. What exactly I'm really talking about is if you go to your coolant bottle, if you have a radiator cap on your car, it doesn't matter if this is a VW, this happens to be a VW, but this can happen to any car. And you open your cap and you see this crud in there. You see that? It looks like a milkshake. And what that means is that the coolant and the oil somewhere in the engine started to mix, and the crankcase, as as it's spinning, is mixing it all up. Now, that causes many problems. All right, if you see that, your number one problem is probably a blown head gasket, but sometimes your car has an oil cooler. And also, when the oil is getting cooled by this oil cooler, it's also cooled with the coolant. The coolant is what cools the oil. And if that seal leaks or breaks, like a lot of BMWs, a lot of different types of cars, that can also, it's called coolant intrusion. It gets into where it don't belong. Instead of staying in the oil staying in the crankcase and the coolant staying in the cooling system, somewhere there's a weak point and it leaks. 99% of the times, it's a head gasket failure. There is cars where it could be, like I said, it could be the oil cooler, or it can be the water, not really the water pump, but in the turbo area. It could be the turbo cooling pump. It can have a seal leak, but those are more rare. So, and what's this going to do? What's this cause? Well, the first thing it's going to cause is the car to overheat. And the car probably overheated first before it destroyed the head gasket and made it leak. So if your car ran low on oil, coolant, and you didn't realize it or pick it up, and you figured, you see steam coming out, and you figure, okay, let it cool down, let me add coolant, and then you're going about your business, and then a couple of days later, you get this mixture, or telltale sign is misfiring. But head gaskets blow many ways. Sometimes they don't have the coolant mixing with the oil, or it's burning the coolant, where I should have videos where you see the smoke coming out of the car in the back, or that big, thick, billowy smoke. That is when the coolant got into the cylinders and is being burned, but it's not necessarily in the oil. Now, let me show you over here. Here we go. This is actually a VW head. All right. Here's the head gasket. And then you have the cylinder block. Now, you see all these holes? All right. These holes, you have the oil pump on the block and the water pump on the block that pumps coolant and oil through the block, and it goes up and through the head to lubricate the head, to lubricate the cams and lifters and everything like that. And in between there is this gasket, and you have coolant passages and you have oil passages. Now, if the engine overheats, most of the time the head warps. It usually warps in the middle. It bows like this. It usually goes like this, not that extreme, but you know what I mean. And now what happens now is you have coolant passages and oil passages. So now the oil could either mix with the coolant, right? Or the coolant can go into the combustion chamber, burn, and there's where you get all that thick white smoke. But in this case, this car is not burning. It's not burning that thick white smoke. So what probably happened is that the coolant got into an oil passage because it's warped. All right? Or the gasket is old and it's corroded, and you have an oil passage that can get into the coolant. And what it does is it mixes, and as the car is running, the crankshaft is blending it all up and making it look like a milkshake. All right? So, and then, like I said, the symptoms obviously is the rough running. In this case, we're talking about the milkshake part. We're talking about the oil mixing with the coolant. All right? You're going to have here, it overflowed. You see over here? You see it all down in there? Because this overflow tank over here has an overflow. When there's too much pressure, all right, it builds up and there's an overflow hole, you know, like a vent that comes out and it goes down, and you can see the telltale signs of all this happening. All right, and like I said, it doesn't just happen. Either the gasket failed by being old and corroded, and that's not usually the case unless it's a super old car, but it's always heat. It's always if the coolant wasn't maintained or went low, or you didn't catch it in time, and the car heated up too much, or the fans don't work, it's not cooling the car, the gauge goes into the red, you don't pull the car over, you ignore it, whatever it is, and the engine overheats, and there's when you have all these types of problems. Like I said, this is a VW. I'm talking about any car. It doesn't have to be a VW, so don't start calling out VW. This happens to any car. I did this on all types of cars, from Fiats to Ferraris. You don't maintain the car. It's a mechanical device. It's going to fail. And I didn't even touch this car yet, and just by looking at it, the coolant, all right, you see that's not clear coolant. That's the Milkshake. That's the oil with the coolant mixed together. So it had two problems. It was leaking into the combustion chamber, which built the pressure up and caused it to overflow. Plus, it was mixing with the oil for some time. So it was mixing with the oil, got too hot, too much pressure, built up, and you have this mess now. Now this car does start. I'll show you. All right. Of course, you got all the lights going on. This car's been sitting, so all these lights don't necessarily mean, but the EPC light definitely, because it means multiple misfiring. It's already shutting down cylinders. And you can see how bad it's shaking. That. Bad. Look at that. Not knocking. That's good. So let me just shut it down. All right. So first thing we're going to have to do with this car, I have videos on how to replace the head gasket. All right, so I'm not going to do this one because I don't want to repeat the video, but as I take it apart, I'm going to show you what happened with this one. If you're curious, I'm going to make another video on that, but not the removal of the head gasket, because that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to take the remove the head gasket. I'm going to check the cylinder head, see if it's warped. All right, this car has so many different codes. So what I like to do is I like to clear all the codes and concentrate on which ones come back. And the ones that were coming back was a misfire on number 2 and number 3 cylinder. That's telling me that the head warped bad. So this is where I'm at right now. So the symptoms, like I said, the obvious ones, especially if you know the car overheated, is going to be severe misfiring, poor throttle response. The car's not going to want to move. It all depends how bad it warped the cylinder head. Obviously, the Milkshake, we don't want that. The oil mixing with the coolant. You'll have the EPC light on if it's a VW, or the check engine light blinking. When a check engine light blinks, that means it's a severe misfire, and you should pull over because it's going to destroy the catalytic converter, and it can burn a valve. It's just bad to do that, especially when a check engine light is blinking. I'll make a video on that too. All right, guys, Motorcarnut, please subscribe, hit that like button. Any questions pertaining to the video, leave them below. I answer all my questions. And another thing, if you guys have ideas for me to make other videos, I would really appreciate it in the comments. And if I can make one, I will. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching.